So when we talk about moving and being all about the timing, I want you to understand this phrase, that movement through seasons requires the accurate recognition of the moment so that you can respond accordingly. It's all about the timing, right? Because if you don't understand the season, if I don't recognize that I'm married, I will not act like a married man. You understand? In honor of Father's Day, if you do not understand that you are a father, that you have given life to this child, you will not act like a father if you do not recognize the season that you are in. Are you hearing me? If you do not understand that you are in the season of wifehood, you will not act like a wife in your season. Therefore, there will be a missing part in what's supposed to be the season that you're living in. You hear what I'm saying? If you do not recognize that God is trying to get you to start something new, start a business, launch a business, better a business, and you miss that season because you did not recognize it, therefore you did not respond accordingly to the opportunity, that opportunity is going to pass you by, or it's going to be delayed. Are you understanding what I'm saying? We have got to learn to properly recognize the seasons that we are in so that we can respond accordingly. It's all about the timing. You've got to figure out what to do and when to do it. Let me say it more simply. I'll say that again. We have got to figure out what to do and when to do it. And in order to do that with God, we've got to learn to discern. We've got to learn to use our spiritual senses to figure this out. But because this is something that we do have to develop, and we learn over time, I want to help us this morning, because I believe this is what God said exactly to share with us this morning, with a couple things to do as you're figuring it out. In other words, what to do and when to do it while we're figuring out how to do it, right? So let's jump in. The first point that I want to highlight for us today is that we have to understand that we need to work in the season or the time of planting and enjoy the reward in the time of harvest. Leave that up there for a second because I need to break this down. We need to learn to work in the time of planting and enjoy the reward in the time of harvest. Have you ever picked a fruit and eaten a fruit that was not yet in season? How does it taste? How? Bleh. Okay. Everybody understands that, right? It tastes bleh, right? It tastes bitter, it tastes sour, it tastes hard, it's not soft, because fruit out of season was not meant to be eaten. Can I just, oh God, yeah, okay. For all of us who've done here, this is not a way of judgment, because, you know, I was there too. If you have sex out of an appointed season, it's not as enjoyable as it's supposed to be in the right season. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on that one. I'll fall on the sword for that one. Are you hearing me? Why? Because it was intended for a specific season. Is it enjoyable out? Yes, but it's much more enjoyable in. And if it's out, when you bring it in, you'll bring other stuff in. I'm going to leave that one there because that wasn't in the notes. I don't need to go there. All right. Work in the time of planting and enjoy the reward in the time of harvest. If you eat fruit out of season, it's bitter. It's sour. It's not ripe because it wasn't meant to be eaten in that season. None of us would hand over the keys to our cars to our 5-year-olds because it is not the season for them to be driving cars. Yes or no? None of you guys would grant the access codes to your banking accounts to your new employee in your business because it's not the season. You got to figure out whether or not you can trust them or not. If you don't move in the right season, it is risky and it will cause damage and it will be bitter. However, if you eat fruit in the right season, how's it taste? Not bad, right? It's going to taste sweet. It's going to taste good. It's going to be ripe. It's going to be what it was supposed to be, what God intended it to be in the right season when you move right in the right season. But here's the thing. I said again, we have to work in the time of planting and enjoy the reward in the time of harvest. Too many of us want to enjoy rewards without ever having planted. I'm gonna say this out there, but don't raise your hands. How many of us in this room have credit card debt? Don't raise your hand. Okay? Now we can We can have financial discussions and economical discussions about the benefits of credit cards and the proper use of debt, if there is a proper use of debt, and how to use that and how to leverage that. We can have those discussions all day long. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got credit cards, it's because you tried to buy something out of season. You tried to enjoy the harvest without having fully planted. Because how many guys understand, if you plant something now, it's going to produce its fruit. Problem is, it just takes time to produce the fruit. And none of us like to wait for the time for the fruit to be produced. So we want to get the harvest now, but we haven't planted to get the harvest. There can be no expectation of a harvest if you've not planted the seeds. Are you hearing me? He says it in Scripture. He says it in a different context, but the principle applies. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, what does Jesus say, or God says? He says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. That's not the verse. Galatians 6, 7, it's not up there, don't worry. Do not be deceived. He says, God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. You will harvest what you sow. If you try to harvest something out of season, for example, using credit card debts, what happens? You're going to reap what you sowed. What did you sow? You sowed a purchase out of season. So what did you reap? You reap debt and interest rates, and you become a slave to the debtor, to the creditor. Are you guys hearing what I'm saying? There are things that are not meant to be taken out of season, okay? Now, if you plant, make no mistake about it, God cannot be mocked. You're going to get what you sowed if you planted. So when we're figuring out how to recognize the seasons, what am I supposed to do and when, how am I supposed to move, you need to learn to work in the time of planting and enjoy the reward in the time of harvest. There will be a time of harvest. My mentor told me this. He said this. There is the nourishing power of rain is best met when there are seeds in the ground. Think about that for a second. The nourishing power of rain is best met when there are seeds in the ground. How many guys understand if there's no seeds in the ground, there's nothing to produce fruit? There's nothing to make grow. If you've not sown love into a relationship, there's no love to build off of. Are you hearing me? If you've not sown time in studying a skill and studying a craft, there's no business to build off of that skill or that craft. Are you hearing what I'm saying? This is simple facts, but it's all scriptural truth, guys. The question is, what seeds have you sown? Because there is no fruit if there's no seeds. When I was a young attorney, when I first started, I know very clearly that God had asked me to open up my own firm. I opened up my own firm at the worst possible time, naturally speaking. I do real estate law, and I opened up right in 2005 when the whole entire real estate market started to crash. How many of you guys remember that? All right? And that's when I opened up my real estate firm, my law firm, in that season. But I knew that God was calling me to do it. And it was crazy because I would see, you know this thing that like lawyers get free consults? Well, not all lawyers get free consults, but God told me I was going to have to get free consults. I was like, all right, cool. But it was a season in my life where I was broker than I had ever been. God was asking me to give free consults to everybody who came in, and it seemed like all I was doing was giving free consults. How many guys understand that free consults don't pay for the food that you got to pay for at the end of the week? Right? And so I got to a point where I got a little bit frustrated because, all right, Lord, I'm trying to be obedient. Okay, I'm giving these free consultations, but every now and then throw a brother a bone, you know what I mean? Hook someone up. You know, let me get not just a free, let me get a paying consult. My favorite was this. The people would come to me, and they would be so grateful with the initial consult. And half the time, I would resolve their problem in the initial consult. Maybe that was my problem. I don't know. But the reality is, I would help them out, and they would be so grateful with the counsel that they would get. And they would say, oh, thank you. Thank you. May God repay you. I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase. You know, I got really good at responding to that phrase. You know what I would say? Yes, and may he use your checkbook. That's, you know what I'm saying? Like, God's going to pay me, but may he use your, I was going to say credit card, but I can't say credit card now. May he use your debit card, you know? The fact of the matter is we will find ourselves in seasons where all we're doing is sowing. but there's a deep desire in us to want to have the fruit. We want to eat the fruit. Like, I got bills to pay. That's part of the fruit. Okay, I wasn't even asking for an abundance of fruit. Just give me like the first fruit, right? But there will be seasons in your life where you have to sow, where you are planting, where you're not going to see the harvest that you want to see. And you know what that requires? It requires maturity. Look to the person next to you. I'm not even going to tell you what we're going to say. You're just going to look to the person next to you. Come on, you're going to enjoy this one. Dads, moms, look to your kids if they're here. Look at them, look at them. Look at them across the room. It's all good. Look at him. Look at somebody. Here, look over here. I don't care. Look at somebody. And just say, grow up. Come on, didn't that feel good? Didn't that feel good? Just you want to do it again, don't you? Some of y'all want to do it again. All right, go ahead, Jessica. It's your birthday this week. Go ahead. Just say, grow up. All right, right? We need to learn to grow up. We need to learn to become mature. Because babies want everything now. That's why they cry. That's why they scream, feed me now. When you grow older, you got to learn that everything doesn't come now. Especially if you have not planted. You got to put in the time. You cannot have an expectation of a harvest where there has been no planting of seeds. So what do? We have to learn to work hard in the time of planting and enjoy the reward in the time of harvest. Look what Ecclesiastes 11:6 says. If you're trying to figure out what to do, here's what you start planting. Here's what it says: sow your seed. In other words, plant your seed in the morning. And at evening, let your hands not be idle. In other words, don't get lazy. For you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. He says, sow your seed in the morning and keep busy at night. Don't stop. If you're in a season that you do not see the harvest that you want to see yet, if you're not seeing the fruit that you got to see yet, if you're not seeing the results that you want to see yet, then you got to wake up in the morning and do what you got to do, and at night keep doing what you got to do. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like, but that sounds like a lot of work. Yeah, planting's a lot of work. But do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he will reap. We've heard that phrase, you reap what you sow. That's always almost exclusively used in a negative context. No, but what you reap, what you sow, you're also going to reap. Learn to see it from a positive perspective. You hear what I'm saying? Yeah, if you sow negative, you're going to reap negative. But if you sow the right thing, if you plant the right thing, if you put in the time and do what you're going to do, you will see the results.